Earlier today, I made a video about the war in Ukraine, talking about how the media and our politicians have been lying about what's really happening on the ground in Ukraine. I talked about how the media and our politicians have been pretending that Ukraine is winning this war so we can keep sending them money when in reality, they've been getting their asses kicked. In that video, I talked about how since this new war has started in Israel, now all of a sudden our politicians on both sides and the mainstream media outlets on both sides are now finally telling the truth about what's going on. And the truth is that Ukraine is not winning. The truth is Ukraine is losing this fight. And now that there's another war on the horizon, America is getting ready to ditch Ukraine. Now, after making that video, ironically enough, Zelensky had a little meeting and a little speech. And in this speech, he literally says that the Israel-Gaza conflict is taking focus away from the war in Ukraine. So we can all see it. At least if you pay attention to the news coverage of both of these conflicts, you can see what's happening here. And he's right. People are losing focus. People are no longer focusing on Ukraine. In fact, in record time, people have totally forgotten about Ukraine. No one even gives a shit anymore at all. Everyone's worried about what's going on in Israel. They're pro-Israel, pro-Palestine. But he's sitting here complaining because he wants the money to keep rolling in, and it looks like that money is going to come to a halt sometime soon, or at least that's what a lot of people are hoping. I think that we have various politicians that will continue to try desperately to funnel as much money into Ukraine as possible. But some decisions are going to be made. And I think that the U.S. is looking at the war in the Middle East, and I think they're going to choose to focus on that as opposed to Ukraine, because I think that America maybe has more interest, maybe more to gain out of the war in the Middle East. But let me go ahead and read to you some things that Zelensky said earlier today. The Israel-Gaza war is taking away the focus from the conflict in Ukraine, said Zelensky. He said that this is one of the goals of Russia, which launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Let me go ahead and pause right there. This is one of the goals of Russia. It's funny because Zelensky will take anything that's going on in the world and he will try to tie it back to Russia as if everything is Russia's fault. If you look at what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on with Israel and Gaza, I don't think you can blame Putin. In fact, crazily enough, oddly enough, Putin's actually been talking about how there needs to be a ceasefire, how there needs to be peace talks, while America and various other NATO countries are like, no, we're good. We need to continue the fighting. But he's trying to say, oh, this was Putin's plan all along. He wanted there to be war in the Middle East so no one would care about Ukraine anymore. It's like, come on, bro. If anyone believes that, they're just dumb. But let's go forward. He denied that the fighting in Ukraine had reached a stalemate, despite a recent assessment to this effect by Ukraine's top military general. Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south has made very little headway thus far. This has prompted fears of war fatigue among Ukraine's Western allies. with suggestions of growing reluctance in some capitals to continue giving Ukraine advanced weapons and funds. Speaking at Saturday's briefing, Zelensky said it's clear that the war in the Middle East is taking away the focus from Ukraine. He said Russia wanted this focus to be weakened, but stressed that everything is in our powers. Zelensky was also asked to comment on this week's assessment by Ukraine's chief military commander that the war was now moving to a positional or static stage, and that this would benefit Moscow by allowing it to rebuild its military power. Everyone is getting tired and there are different opinions, said Zelensky. But this is not a stalemate, he said. He added that Russia was controlling the skies and that Ukraine urgently needs U.S.-made F-16 warplanes and advanced anti-aircraft defenses to change the situation. So, of course, he's like, oh no, we're not losing. We just need fighter jets. We need air defense systems. We need all of this. We need all of you all to continue sending all of your weapons to us. Send all of your money to us. We don't care if you're defenseless. We don't care if you deplete your stocks of weapons as long as you send them to us. Don't worry, it's not a stalemate. The reality is, it's not a stalemate. Because a stalemate would suggest that both of these sides are even, that this is an even tie. That's not the case, folks. There is no stalemate in an invasion. Ukraine has lost 20% of its land. I don't call that a stalemate. I call that a checkmate. It's kind of laughable that they're even calling this a stalemate. Mind you, Zelensky's not even willing to admit it's a stalemate, but it's way worse than that. You don't get to say, oh, Ukraine lost all of this land, they lost this region, this city was taken over, this town was taken over. But don't worry, folks, even though, 20% of Ukraine has been taken over, it's a stalemate. No, you're losing. You're losing. And now Zelensky is getting desperate, because the writing is already on the wall. Everyone who had the Ukrainian flag in their social media bios, everyone that changed their profile picture to the Ukrainian flag, now they have replaced that Ukrainian flag with a Palestinian one. And it's obvious that the powers that be did not get the reaction to the Ukraine war that they wanted, but they are getting the reaction that they wanted to the war with Israel. When you look at the response to the war in Ukraine, sure, you had people LARPing around pretending that they cared about Ukraine for a week or so. But it was nothing compared to what we're seeing now. Make no mistake about it. The powers that be were looking for that next big thing. They want to capitalize off of these wars in any way possible, in multiple ways. In some ways that might not make sense to you at the time, but they will make sense later when you look at the bigger picture. So I believe the powers that be, especially here in America and in the West, in Western civilization, they were looking for the next big thing. The next big thing like Black Lives Matter. They want the chaos, the rioting. They want that in the streets. They want the confusion. They want to, have this chaotic environment surrounding us. They weren't able to do that with Ukraine because no one really gave a damn. But when it comes to this current conflict, even though many of the people that you'll see out here rioting and protesting, most of them can't even point to Israel or Gaza on a map. Most of them have no clue what the hell they're doing, but they know this is the next big thing. They can feel the energy in the air. And they're ready to go out here and act a ass. They're ready to snatch old people out their vehicles. They're ready to riot and protest in front of your home, in front of your church, in front of your office building. They're ready to loot the Target, the CVS, the Walgreens. They're ready to burn down the Wendy's. Because this is the next big thing, folks. If you can't see it, you must be blind. But I can tell you that it's here, and this is it. You see all these protests breaking out across the world in Western civilization? Do you think that's really happening 100% naturally? No. It's already been exposed that New York City has been using taxpayer dollars to fund some of these protests. Now, I don't care if you're pro-Palestine, you're pro-Israel. I really don't care. But if you're one of these people that just likes to take advantage of these situations to cause chaos in the street, I think you are a complete piece of shit. I hate that people are out here pretending that they care about this and pretending that they care about that because they view this as an opportunistic, situation to where they can go smash up some stuff and steal some stuff and you name it. But that's where we're headed at. And you see the war in Ukraine, they weren't able to use that in the way they wanted. If they got the reaction that they wanted to the war in Ukraine, then they wouldn't be as focused on this war in Israel. But they didn't get that reaction. And that's why they are quickly pivoting, because they see the reaction to the war in Israel and they know that they're going to be able to use this chaos to their advantage in the weeks, months, and the years moving forward. Now, when it's all said and done, who knows what the outcome may be? The possibilities are limitless, and it's getting kind of hard to predict what's going to happen in this world because there are curveballs thrown in all the time. But the way it looks right now, at this very moment in time, it looks like America is in the process of kicking Ukraine to the curb. That's what it looks like to me. And when we look back on history, or when future generations look back on history, this is going to be a very interesting conflict to look at. To see how America fully funded this war and was all in, but then at the drop of a dime, they shifted focus. They just completely shifted focus. Now, what do you think is going to happen to Ukraine? Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I don't want to send Ukraine any more money. But at the end of the day, I believe that Ukraine's going to be in a worse position than they've ever been in. And it's going to be a very chaotic area for years to come. It's going to be a very unstable area for years to come. And who knows what will come of that. But I guarantee you, after this war, this will not be the last we've heard of Ukraine. The question is now, it's how does everything play out in the Middle East? Because in some ways, I do believe that America may have some interest in keeping this war going in Ukraine for as long as possible, even though they're focused on the Middle East, because they want to wear down on Russia any way possible without having to directly fight them. So there's a possibility that this keeps going on, but not at the level that we've seen it thus far. And the casualties are going to be through the roof. Like I reported to you all in my last video, there's already around 600,000 people who have died in the war in Ukraine. And that's a number that you don't really hear that often. But I mean, that's a lot of people. And it's only been about a year of fighting. And to think that, Russia hasn't even pushed into more of the heavily populated areas in Ukraine. But for now, let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. If you're feeling generous, you can support this channel by dropping a super thanks, or you can support my channel for totally free by simply hitting that thumbs up button, subscribing, sharing this video, ringing that notification bell, and as always, I'll talk to you all very soon in the next video.